Welcome to day 2 of our 7-day money transformation experience. So, relax in whatever way is going to allow you to have the experience you would truly like to have with money. You can close your eyes, you can breathe. It's not about doing any particular technique, just simply being here and being open to a different awareness of transformation. Rather than looking at it like this is what currently is and this is what I'd like to change it into, let's look at transformation in a slightly different sense. What if the transformation has already occurred? What if the work is already done and you simply haven't been allowing yourself to fully see that, to fully experience that yet? What if everything you truly desire to experience with money already is? You simply need to allow your focus and your attention and your awareness to relax from focusing on interpreting your situation in a certain way. So, right now, to whatever degree you can, just simply relax that sense that your whole experience of money is what you think and feel and believe that it is. Just simply allow that to start to dissipate. And what if it's that simple? What if underneath this very convincing illusion you've created for yourself that money is a certain way lies the truth of what money actually can be in your life? And what if this illusion of who you are and what you are, beneath that is your actual existence? There's this experience, the way that we choose to keep experiencing it. And then there is what actually is. Your fundamental nature is infinite. You are abundant by your very nature. And it can be incredibly easy to lose sight of that, or to forget that, or to pretend that that's not what's true for you. So, to whatever degree you have been pretending, or not seeing, or forgetting that your experience is just your experience, and what you actually are is not defined in any way by that experience, could you love yourself and forgive yourself for buying so completely into this experience that you have actually created? Would you allow yourself to admit that whatever you've been experiencing, you have created, And often we don't want to fully admit that we have created what we're experiencing because we judge what we're experiencing so negatively that we don't want to be the person who created that. We don't want to be the one responsible for creating this thing that we think and feel and believe is so painful to us. So, would you love yourself and forgive yourself and appreciate yourself for having created it? Would you release creating it? And then, would you love that part of you that has been judging what you experience? Would you forgive that part of you that's been judging what you experience? Would you appreciate that part of you that's been judging what you experience? And would you release all of that judgment? And would you release any need for any part of you to go on judging what you've been experiencing? See, a lot of us have major, major, major judgments about the way we have used money in the past. We love to act like there's any way that you can waste money. But what if nothing is a waste of money? And the idea that you can waste money is actually so far from the truth of what money is. So, are you aware that money is infinite? We create this very convincing illusion that money is finite. But what do you actually know? Is money finite or is money infinite? And so, if we really are willing to admit that money is infinite, how can it ever be wasted? If you are infinite and money is infinite, how can anything be a waste? It's just you using something you have in infinite supply to express yourself in a particular way. And having no money is a particular expression. Having just barely enough money to survive is a particular expression. Having way too much money to ever spend is a particular expression. And if you will rest in the awareness that none of these expressions are better or worse than any other expression, you will give yourself a massive, massive break. Now, does that mean you wouldn't like to have more money? No, of course not. Most of us would like to have more money. But in a certain sense, to have that feeling and that thought, I need more money. You start thinking that you need more money. And then you start feeling particular sensations in your body that do not necessarily feel good to you. Now, if we're really present with this, and we really put full awareness on this in a way that we've never put awareness on it before, we will begin to see very quickly how illusory this is. You think you need more money. You think you don't have enough money. And then you start to feel a sensation. And you call that sensation stress, even though that may not actually be what the sensation actually is. What if it's not stress that you are feeling? What if it didn't have to be? What if it's actually up to you completely in a far deeper, easier way than you've ever let yourself know? So, one of the things that I really want to keep emphasizing over the course of this 7 days is that there's not any work for you to do on yourself. And this is, in some ways, a radical departure from a lot of the modalities, because many of them suggest that you identify your limiting beliefs, that you do all of these different worksheets and you fill out questionnaires and you go through and, answer a bunch of questions that give you insights into the way you think and feel and believe about money. And there's value in all of that. That all is helpful and supportive. But don't you really want something quicker and easier? If you wanted to sit and work on your problem for hours a day or months or years, you would have already done that, and you wouldn't be here looking for this more magical approach to having the experience you truly desire. So somewhere you know that you can actually have the experience you desire in a quicker, easier way, and that you don't have to do nearly as much work on yourself as you might have thought. So right now, just let yourself have the experience, even if it's just for a moment, of needing to do absolutely nothing to enhance your relationship and your experience with money. Give yourself the experience right now of having the greatest possible experience with money that you can imagine. What would you truly like to experience with money? And if you were having that experience right now, you may not get a specific thought. You may not get a specific feeling. You may not even believe that you're having the experience. But even so, allow yourself to simply have the experience right now of having the greatest possible experience you could have with money. If all of the money you could imagine was here right now, what would that experience be? If you knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that you never had anything to stress out about when it comes to money ever again, what would that experience be like? If you knew that you could spend and spend and spend and spend, and there would always be more money, what would that experience be like? Somewhere you are already far more familiar with what this experience is and the total creation of this experience than you've ever allowed yourself to think or feel that you are. So I'm going to describe something that's going to sound very insane. And it is very insane. But is it possible that you haven't allowed yourself to think or feel or believe anything that would reflect the experience you would truly like to have with money, so that you can maintain the experience you're currently having? Is it remotely possible that you actually know every thought you would have if you had all the money in the world? Is it possible that you already know exactly how you would feel if you had all the money in the world? Is it possible that you already know everything that you would believe and everything you would no longer believe if you had all the money in the world? Is it possible that you currently now, as you are, without fixing or changing anything about your consciousness, your awareness, your state of being, is it possible that you right now truly know everything you would think, everything you would feel, and everything you would believe and everything you wouldn't believe if you had all the money in the world? And you start to perceive that streaming into your experience, even though it's not supposed to. It goes against the experience that you've been having, because you're allowing yourself to stream in things that don't fit in the experience you've been creating for yourself. And if you will really start to unfold the idea, wow, no wonder I couldn't figure out how to make more money. No wonder I couldn't figure out how to manage my money better. No wonder nobody wanted to pay me, and I've always got bills coming in and I never have. No wonder everything that I was experiencing with money was the way it was. And I seemingly could find no remedy, because all along I was the one dictating what thoughts, what feelings, and what beliefs were permitted and which ones were not permitted. It's so easy when we're exposed to new ideas to go, oh, well, I don't feel that. I don't think that way. I don't believe that. And we're quite pointed in what we will let in and what we will not let in. The thing is, you've probably had this experience of having a particular problem that you'd like to solve, whether that's with money or a relationship or any kind of thing that you can frame in your head as a problem. You've probably gone looking for someone who can solve it for you. And sometimes you find that person very easily. But other times, you're going through every book you can find. You're looking for every guru and teacher and mentor and person who has anything to say about this particular topic, and you're going, please tell me everything. And they tell you everything. And you always come to this point where you go, wow, that all sounded so great. But now you're talking about something that I don't agree with. So I don't think it's going to work for me. Or you try what they suggest for a little bit, and it works for a little bit until it doesn't. Now, would you be willing to admit that that occurs the way it does because you have actually chosen an experience that does not permit the easy flow of the kind of awareness that could radically alter your experience right away? That sounds insane. It kind of spins you a little bit, but really touch base with it for just tap on it in your awareness. Is it at all possible that I already know how to have a completely different experience with money, and I haven't been allowing myself to actually know that? In spirituality, people talk about the higher self or the being. And it works to a certain extent for me, but then I go kind of off on the language because I don't like the idea that there's a better version of me that I don't have much immediate access. And some people even call this ego that you are the false self, which, fine. But is it possible that it's not really a higher self? It's not in any way separate from the self you think you are right now. Is it possible you've simply agreed with yourself not to have all of the awareness that would allow you to know you are completely free now? Is it possible so that you can have incredibly distinct and convincing and deep and real experiences? You agree to let yourself pretend not to have an awareness of all things. Would you be willing to admit that you truly know far more than anyone can tell you? That right now you already know a process by which you would dissolve everything about your experience and instantaneously create it anew into whatever you like. And in fact, that you are so powerful and so present and so aware that it is not even a process for you. It is not something that takes days. It is not something that takes weeks or months or years. It is something that is so effortless and instantaneous for you that it is easier than breathing. This would be radically different than anything you've ever experienced if you were to admit the fundamental nature of the experience you're having. That actually, yes, I have created what I'm experiencing right now down to the last detail. Every cell, every dot, iota of energy. I have arranged it all into the experience that I'm having right now. And I have agreed with myself the degree to which I'm even going to actually know, moment by moment, that I did that. I'm going to really let myself pretend that I have no idea how this happened, that I have no idea how it's happening, and that I have no idea what's going to happen in the future. And because I am pretending that I have no idea what's going to happen in the future, even though I know that I am creating everything, I'm going to pretend I have no clue what's going to happen in the future. I'm going to pretend there even is a future in the first place. But insofar as there is a future, I have no idea what's going to happen there. And because I have no idea what's going to happen there, I'd better start making stuff up. I'd better start planning for the worst. I'd better start expecting that the future really has a vested interest in hurting me. Would you be willing to admit that you've been playing that game with yourself, and that you know you've been playing that game with yourself, and that you know it is up to you when you start to play a different game, when you start to have a different experience? And what is really fun and exciting about this, that when it's happening, when you're creating it this way, doesn't seem fun and exciting, is we will occasionally open ourselves up to this way of thinking. And we'll go, yes, I'm finally free. I'm finally ready to admit that I know everything, that I'm creating everything, that everything is just for me to experience and nothing's happening to me, and I'm not a victim, and I have all the power, and I'm infinite, and I am eternal, and I am totally abundant, and I'm so ready to just fly into my brand new experience of being the center of all reality. And then something really bad appears to happen. The bills come in more, the debts come in more, the relationship explodes, something horrible occurs, or seems to occur, or seems to happen that we had no hand in, just to give ourselves the illusion of finally taking hold of the wheel and choosing where we're driving, only to realize we're not actually in control. If you are experiencing a moment like that, and I have had so many of those, even lately, I have these experiences where I feel more lucid than ever, and then the next day I'm creating something that looks and feels and sounds like a disaster. Would you really let yourself know that that is not a reality, that it's something you are creating for reasons that are not as dense and not as complicated and not as rooted in what we might call trauma as one might think. If you didn't look at those experiences that you create that feel really bad and really heavy and really serious, if you were willing to admit that they're actually not, no matter how they appear, no matter how they feel, if you were willing to admit you created them and that you don't have to interpret them negatively, they would pass very quickly. And is it possible that if you really, really admitted what that actually is, without any story attached, you'd never have to have an experience like that ever again? You're not actually here to suffer. Suffering isn't even actually what you think it is. What if suffering is just a misperception? So look back for a moment at your whole story and experience with money. How much of it has been about suffering? The ways you suffer because of money, the ways you have to suffer to get money, the ways you suffer when you don't have money. All of the suffering that appears to be involved for everyone on earth around the topic of money. Now, when I was talking earlier about you knowing a process where you instantaneously set yourself free, as if you even need that because you're already free. But when I was talking about that, this is what I'm talking about. This kind of thing, where you really look at your whole story and experience from day one until now, of all the different ways you and everyone you know and everyone you think you don't know, how everybody seems to suffer when it comes to money, except for the few people who aren't, who everybody says are the really bad people because they're not suffering over money, and they're inflicting suffering because they're having more money than everybody else. Would you look at the whole story that you have created for yourself to buy into and believe? And would you admit that you created it for yourself to buy into and believe? It's like if you dug a really deep hole and then you jumped to the bottom of it, and then you went, how did I get to the bottom of this really deep hole? This is terrible. How did this happen? And you looked around for anybody you could blame. And even once you got to the point where you could go, oh wait, I dug the hole, you still have the idea that you didn't want to jump into the hole in the first place, and that being at the bottom of the hole is really serious. This is a way that we almost seem to judge ourselves out of existence. The good news is you can't judge yourself out of existence. So, with absolutely no judgment at all, could you admit, wow, I created this entire appearance of suffering when it comes to money? Just play with it and see what happens if you were to admit that this entire ongoing appearance that anyone on earth is suffering based at all on money, that there's any suffering attached to money, that there is any suffering that occurs because of money, that there is any suffering, period, would you really let yourself admit, wow, I created this incredibly compelling illusion that there is such a thing as suffering? And I have had so many days where I fully thought and fully felt and fully believed that I was suffering so much. What if that didn't have to be so serious and so sacred and so real? And what if no part of that experience that you had created, that you've been calling suffering and believing was suffering and have felt in every cell of your body as suffering, what if none of that actually applied to you as a creator, as a being, as the awareness that you are? Wouldn't it be kind of a relief to let yourself admit that you know that none of this appearance of suffering that you've appeared to experience for as long as you can remember actually applies to what you truly are at all? No matter how convincing it truly appears to be. What if it doesn't actually mean anything about you? What if it didn't dictate who you are or what you can and cannot experience? What if right now you would fully admit that you can experience everything, that suffering is optional, and that to whatever degree you have chosen suffering, you have actually chosen it. And this is not to judge yourself. This is not to be severe about. This is not to push back against. It is to release yourself from the need to keep reinforcing that experience, to keep seeking that experience out more and more, and to keep punishing yourself that you've been seeking that experience more and more and more. I used to hear this song on the radio a lot when I was younger. I'm not going to remember the name, and I'm not going to interrupt the stream of consciousness to go and look it up. But the line that always stuck with me, and I might be totally misremembering, it's just what I always heard, was, "You bleed just to know you're alive." I think it's actually "you breathe just to know you're alive." But I used to always hear, "You bleed just to know you're alive." And I think that there is something to that statement about the experience that we create for ourselves. It is almost like we have thought and felt and believed that in order to know that we are real, we take on a great deal of suffering. And you'll notice when people are really having something about something, they will do anything to reinforce that the way they are suffering is real. It can be about any subject. And no matter what you ask them or how you try to comfort them or what you say, they will do anything to prove to you that the suffering is real. And I'm sure if you are interested in personal development whatsoever, you've probably caught yourself doing that at some point in your life where you know that the thing you're choosing to suffer over isn't really causing you to suffer, but you will tell anyone who will listen why it is definitely forcing you to suffer. What if we could admit that suffering is not a fundamental component of life? It's not that we need to avoid it. It's not, I'm not suggesting like toxic positivity. It's coming from a totally different sphere of awareness than any of that. And you actually know somewhere that you are that space of awareness where you're not the one suffering. You are the one who is aware of a thought, of a feeling, of a sensation that you start to define as suffering. And you start to turn into a story of suffering. So, it's quite a long stream that didn't appear to necessarily be directly about money a lot of the way. But really look, do you feel and think and believe that you have more space to have more money after this very weird conversation? And now that we've introduced this idea that having money might just be a space inside of your own awareness, look to see, okay, how much space in my own awareness have I allowed myself when it comes to having money? Do you feel like you have a wide open, infinite, ever-expanding, massive space to have money? Or do you feel like you've got the space of a thimble or the point of a needle or something? What if you could allow yourself to have an infinite space inside of your awareness and inside of your consciousness where you can have an infinite amount of money? And what if remembering that was all it took for you to have more money? And when you forget it and go into your experience of appearing to not have enough money, what if you could just remind yourself, hold on a second, my awareness is infinite. My awareness is an infinite space which can contain an infinite amount of money and an infinite amount of experiences I would like to have. Do you ever notice that when you're having an experience that you define as negative, It seems like the negative experiences might be infinite. That's because they are. You have infinite space inside of your awareness to have an infinite number of experiences. Guess who gets to choose and create those experiences? And the really good news is, it's not based on time, and it's not based on your story. Regardless of how much time you have been choosing to experience what you have been choosing to define as negative, you can always, always, always instantaneously choose to create and experience whatever you desire. And when you choose to create it and experience it, it's created. That flies in the face of everything we let ourselves see in this experience we're having. But isn't that amazing? That you create an experience so compelling that you can forget, I can instantly change this into whatever I want. I can truly have whatever I desire. But man, I've made something that makes me feel like I can't have anything. If we would have true admiration and appreciation of that faculty, rather than judgment, rather than feeling like there's any experience we should be having, or there's any experience we shouldn't be having, what would we not be able to experience if we truly trusted ourselves to create anything, to experience anything, and we were in appreciation of all of it? What would be impossible? What if nothing was impossible for you? What if money was no longer an issue for you? What if it never was? What if you are already whatever you'd like to be transformed into with regards to money? What if the change that you've been seeking everywhere has already occurred? What if you let yourself know that? What if you let yourself think that? What if you let yourself feel that? What if you let yourself believe it? What if you let it be true? Whether you think it, feel it, know it, believe it, or have any evidence of it, what if you just allowed yourself to be what you actually are? The amazing news is, you're already doing that. Just let yourself remember that. Okay, everybody. This was amazing. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on day 3. Bye-bye.